Good evening and welcome to the 2010 Louisiana Senate debate between Republican incumbent David Vitter and Democratic House Representative Charlie Melancon. I'm political analyst Jeremy Walker, and I'll be your host tonight. It is pretty well known that Louisiana has been a marginally liberal state for decades. Its demographic represents that of the Democratic Party, as the majority of its population is youth, educated, and metropolitan. However, about 40% of Louisiana's voters are still politically conservative, and with Republicans looking to take over power this fall, this is not a fight Vitter is willing to lose, unlike his fight against adultery. Recent polls show that Vitter is ahead by 15% and has been ahead throughout his campaign, but Melancon is not a punk, and he will put up a fight. This should be a great, if not interesting, debate.
Thank you, Jeremy, and welcome to our live debate. Let's start with each of our candidates' opening statements, and Senator Vitter, you may go first.
First, I want to thank everyone participating in tonight's debate for their keen interest in the well-being of Louisiana. Like Jacqueline said, I'm incumbent Senator David Vitter. The events of this year's race have troubled me deeply. Not only has there been a complete lack of focus on the issues, but my opponent seems to think personal attacks on my character are what is needed to better our state. I feel the current state of our economy is egregious, to say the least, with unemployment rates at an all-time high. So re-elect me. While in Congress last year, I worked with my colleagues to create the No-Cost Stimulus Act of 2009. This piece of legislation has the potential to provide more than 2 million Americans jobs and $10 trillion in GDP, all without borrowing a dime. So please, re-elect me, and I will continue to enact legislation just like this.
First and foremost, I would like to thank you all for allowing me the opportunity to participate in this debate. My name is Charlie Melancon, and I am a straight-up-the-middle fighter for the little guy. This year alone, I supported the Continuing Extension Act of 2010 that provided more unemployment aid to those who desperately needed it. For many years, I have been fortunate enough to serve in the House of Representatives, and I have fought for bills to reform federal disaster response and worked with a delegation of Congress to bring billions of recovery dollars to South Louisiana. Unlike my opponent over here, who seems to be preoccupied visiting the local prostitutes, my voting record demonstrates my support for small businesses. Thank y'all, and remember, he likes prostitutes.
Thank you, candidates, for your opening statements. Now let's begin with our first question from Ms. Isabel Gonzalez.
Mr. Vitter, you said that you oppose Obamacare. My question is, what would you do to improve the health care of all Americans?
Well, the first step I would take would be to rebuke my opponent in the Obama administration for the healthcare reform they have passed. I am strongly opposed to socialized medicine and to letting Washington bureaucrats make decisions that should be made by doctors and their patients. It is possible to make healthcare affordable by reducing costs, which is why I've tenaciously fought in the Senate to lower prescription drug prices. No one should go without their life-saving drugs because of skyrocketing costs, and I am working hard to break down the expensive barriers to medicine so that patients won't have to choose between their prescription drugs and other necessities.
We need to fix the broken system that we now have in place, and we need fiscally responsible market-based healthcare reforms that protect the sanctity of life and basic family values. I voted against America's Affordable Health Choices Act in 2009 due to the simple fact that I cannot sit idly by and watch our taxpayers fund abortions. We need to establish more providers in rural communities, but the public option, as designed, would unfairly undercut anything that the private sector could offer us Americans. My opponent's idea would be for people to buy their prescription drugs from Canada. That's highly un-American. But then again, what do you expect? He does like prostitutes.
Now, here is Blake Medley with the final question.
Mr. Melancon, due to the recent catastrophes in the Gulf and the disapproval of how Obama handled the oil spill, what will you implement in order to have a more rapid and effective recovery from such tragedies?
Reform bills to try to fix the flaws in the government's disaster and response relief systems. Billions are being wasted annually on pork projects across the country, while here in Louisiana, we are desperately lacking new funds for schools, roads, and coastal erosion. I understand that accidents happen, but I believe that when I'm elected to Congress, I will implement new laws like the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act of 2009, which will quickly and effectively supply aid in the event of another tragic natural disaster. There's no reason why our goals should suffer such as this due to the fact that we are unprepared for these accidents. Thanks, and remember, he likes prostitutes.
I wholeheartedly agree with the disappointment my fellow Louisianians feel towards Barack Obama and how his administration has handled the BP oil spill. This is why, once re-elected, I will work tirelessly to hold BP fully responsible for all the liabilities, damages, and costs they have placed on our nation. But the spill has finally ceased, so the moratorium proposed by Charlie Melancon's party, I believe, is damaging our currently tenuous economy. What we need is to expedite the sluggish distribution of drilling permits. I believe this because, according to a recent study conducted by Southern Methodist University, the slowing down of permit distribution has put nearly 40,000 Louisianians' jobs in jeopardy. If re-elected, I will fight to have the moratorium lifted immediately so that Louisianians may have their jobs back.
Well, it seems like we're all out of time. Let's end with a brief overview from our political analyst, Jeremy.
Since the release of the first polls, David Vitter has had anywhere from a 10 to 15 point lead over Melisson, and it doesn't look like that'll change. Melisson may have wore his heart on his sleeve during the BP hearings, and that may have made him a household name, and he may have raised over $4 million for his campaign, but it won't be enough to beat the pillars of incumbency. Look for David Vitter to retain his Senate seat come election night.